Hello, little Vickies. Welcome back to my channel. Tonight I'll be sharing some creepy stories from Reddit that are allegedly true. If you like what you hear, please subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the like button as it's incredibly helpful to me while trying to grow my garden of little Vickies here on YouTube. If you have something to suggest, or would just like to say hello, please leave a comment. I always reply. If you have a story of your own you'd like to share and have read on the channel, send it to veronica45stories@gmail.com. Link is also in the description. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it more than I can say. Now it's time to relax and get on with the stories. This happened back in 2010 when I was 21. My best friend and I had blown off any sort of responsibility for a whole summer and chose to just party instead. It's probably no surprise that by the end of the summer we were both evicted, we were roommates, and now condemned to our parents' houses until we got our shit together again. One night we were at my mom's place playing Left 4 Dead until about 2 a.m. when Cam decided to call a cab and head back to his mom's place. He had to use my phone to call the cab company because he forgot to pay his bill. Yes, I know, we were real winners at this point in our lives. This was also the days before Uber and Lyft, so you'd have to call the station and they'd call for a car over their CB thing. About 15 minutes later, we could see the cab waiting outside and he got in and left. 10 minutes later, I got a call on my cell phone from the cab company. I knew the number by heart, so I knew it was coming from the central station. When I answered, there was a woman on the line whose voice immediately sent shivers through my body. "This is Badger Cab calling for Cameron. His cab has arrived." I was confused and responded with something like, huh? She said, "Tell Cameron to come outside." The voice was echoey and distant, like it was an auditory house of mirrors bouncing around a fog-drenched void. I wasn't sure why the voice was creeping me out so much, so I tried pushing it aside and told her that he already left like 10 minutes ago. I glanced out the window and saw a car idling outside on the street. It was parked a bit to the right of my house, so all I could see were the brake lights. I figured dispatch probably sent an extra cabbie on accident. I told her I was sorry, but there must have been a mix-up because he already left. But the woman responded almost like she didn't hear me the first time. "Tell him to come outside," she repeated, but this time with a rigid bite in her tone. "He was already picked up," I repeated. There were a few weird noises for a second, like wind was blowing into the microphone, then the call dropped. I redialed the number to the cab company and a man answered. I told him what had just happened, leaving out the creepiness of the voice, and let him know that they must have sent 2 cabs on accident. "I don't have any female cab drivers out tonight," the dispatcher told me. I thought to myself, maybe it was a guy with a high-pitched voice. He told me that the driver picked up my friend just fine a while ago and that a cab driver wouldn't call through their landline like that anyways. When I told him there was a car idling outside and reiterated that there was 100% a woman calling telling my friend to come outside and get in her car, he started getting very creeped out and worried. We both figured that someone had to have spoofed the cab company's phone number. It's pretty easy to do, but that didn't leave us with any comfort. Why was someone spoofing a cab company's phone number and waiting outside their customer's pickup location? How did she even know that Cameron had called for a cab? I hadn't talked to anyone, and Cam didn't have a phone. The dispatcher radioed his driver and made sure he had Cameron and that everything was fine, and then let me know he was safe and almost to his destination. The dispatcher and I talked on the phone for a couple minutes brainstorming what the fuck could possibly be happening. From his perspective, it's almost like someone is following and trying to lure a customer into their car, which is probably not good for business. After Cam made it to his mom's crib, he called me on the landline there to ask what was going on. The only logical explanation he could think of was that it was this stalker he's been dealing with for several years. He had a restraining order on her because she would follow him, break into his apartment and wait for him to come home, and would do all sorts of weird, creepy shit like that. I'm not totally convinced that's what was happening, though. How would she have known he had just called for a cab on my phone? How would she have known where my mom lives? If he were leaving my actual place or the place of one of our close friends, then that would be plausible. But we were pretty tucked away on the outskirts of a town in a suburb, and my mom has a different last name than I do, so she couldn't have Googled it. But it's the most logical explanation either of us could come up with, so it's the one I'm betting on until someone throws out a better theory. I'm a single male, 33, who lives alone in Denver. My apartment complex is not what you would call a nice building. I'm on a road close to Colfax Avenue, which, if you're familiar with the geography of this area, is not the safest boulevard in town. I'm a few streets away from it, but close enough that I wouldn't consider this an up-and-coming neighborhood. This evening, I was watching Netflix on my couch. My 2 cats were cuddled up against me as I lay under a comforter. The night before, I had watched a horror movie that was scary enough to leave me in an unsettled mood, making it hard to sleep. So this night, I decided to watch a stand-up special instead, keep it light so I wouldn't have any trouble getting some shut-eye. I have classes early the next morning, so I was surprised when I made the conscious decision to turn on a second stand-up special and let myself fall asleep on the couch. I was just so comfy where I lay and didn't want to move, not even to turn off the several lights on throughout my apartment. I remember dozing off around 11 o'clock. It was effortless, which meant I was really snug under the covers with my cats flanking me on either end, creating a tucked-in feeling. I fell into a dream wherein I was on an impromptu date with this guy whom I didn't recognize at a Blockbuster video store. He bought me blue and yellow underwear, like a Blockbuster would sell in Dreamland, insinuating I would take the hint of his intentions. He was also desperate for a job, so when we got to the counter, he was given an off-the-cuff interview that didn't go well. And all of a sudden, I'm not sleeping anymore. I'm woken up by a knock at my door. Then a man's voice says, "Maintenance." I just sat there, sitting bolt upright on my couch. I knew something was off. I looked at my phone, which was by my left hand, and the time was 2:15 a.m. I didn't move. The floors in my apartment are old wood, and there are many creaky floorboards. I didn't want whoever was knocking to know someone was at home and awake, let alone alert to his presence. My cats got up and ran over to the door as they normally would, but I stayed still and listened. After a few minutes, with no answer, the man walked away from the door and down the hallway to the stairs. A moment after that, I heard the back door to the building swing open and closed. I have one window where I have a partial view of that door, so I break my paralysis and race over to it. I saw an old-looking green SUV sitting in the no parking zone just in front of the back door. It must have been running the entire time because I didn't hear it start up and the brake lights were glowing red. Someone, presumably the maintenance man, got in the car and it drove off. I don't know what his intentions were, but no one knocks on someone's door at 2:15 a.m. claiming to work for the landlord with good deeds in mind. Had it been a true emergency, wouldn't he have knocked again? Used his service key to get into the unit? What did I just avoid here? I can only assume it was an attempted robbery at best or abduction at worst. When I was watching the SUV drive off, I surveyed the other apartment windows. They were all dark. I can see every unit except the two other corner apartments below me from that vantage point. I think because my apartment sticks out from the buildings and has many windows, I was targeted because my lights were visibly on and noticeable from the street. However, I don't know how this individual got into the building in the first place, as you would need a key to do so. I've never been so legitimately afraid as a single person living alone. I'm grateful I installed a security chain on my door when I moved in. I'm also so glad that even in my disoriented state I had the presence of mind not to move from the couch or make any noise. As I recount the event, I can't stop my eyes from leaking tears, though I wouldn't call it crying. My nerves are definitely shot. I don't think I'll be going back to dreamland anytime soon. I have turned off all the lights save for the lamp by my bed. I usually can't sleep with it on. Tonight, I don't think I could sleep with it off. I'm not sure if this actually counts as creepy or just strange, but at the time it definitely creeped me out. So this happened around 10 years ago on a winter's evening. Where we live here in the UK, there are a lot of farms around us and most roads are unlit. Me, my wife, and stepson, 11 years old at the time, had just been to do some food shopping and were driving home. It was probably around 8 in the evening. We had just rounded a corner when I noticed in one of the fields there was an overturned car. I told my wife to pull over. I thought I would check if the occupants were okay. In hindsight, this was probably a very bad idea. I vaulted over the field gate and walked towards the car, headlights still on, engine running with the wheels spinning. I was approaching the side of the car when I noticed a man appear from the opposite side. He began walking around the back of the car towards me, so I backed away. As he came into the tail lights of the car, I noticed he was covered in blood. He had a knee-length dirty brown coat and unkempt beard and hair. I noticed he was carrying what looked like a tire iron. He shouted to me, "Don't ring the police." I asked if he was okay. He replied he was fine, but repeated to not ring the police. He made a motion towards me, so I backed away again. He paused, looking towards me, and then to the edge of the field where my wife and stepson were waiting in the car. We seemed to be stood there for ages. Probably only 20 seconds or so, though. At that moment, I thought this was going either two ways, him coming for me or him just making a run for it. Luckily, he dropped the tire iron and ran with a really bad limp towards my wife's car. I ran back to the gate where I came from and stood front of our car to see him hobble across the road and off into another field. I got back in our car, locked all the doors, and explained what had happened to my wife and decided to ring the police anyway. I explained to the police the encounter, where the car was, and where the man ran. They said they would look into it and may send someone to my house for a statement. The following day, we get a visit from the police. I asked if they had found the man and was he okay. They said they were having trouble locating him and were not able to find the car or even evidence of a car crashing into the field. They said they would investigate, but at this point, with no evidence of anything that happened, there wasn't much they could do. We did go back to see if we could see any evidence, and it was like it never happened. No hedge or fence damage, no skid marks. It had been raining heavily, so the field was very waterlogged, so any footprints or tire tracks were not visible. Maybe not the creepiest story ever, but certainly strange. This is something mildly creepy that I'm not sure what to make of. I work in a public-facing, very intense job, and adversarial job where I meet all different manner of people. I have a work cell phone to separate my personal from work calls. One day, in 2021, a Saturday, I received about 5 missed calls in a row to my work phone from a number I didn't have saved. I thought maybe it was a client, and I called back to no response. I texted that I apologized for missing the call and to reach back out. The calls kept coming, but when I would answer, there would be no response. When I called, no response. When I missed the calls, there would be a voice message with a faint tapping or rustling sound and almost a beep sound at the end. I searched through all my numbers to see if it was someone I had forgotten to save as a contact. No luck. This continued for a while, a week or two, and then I gave up. There would be a few days with no calls, and then suddenly they would come back in full force. I searched the number on Google, and it came back to an unfamiliar name. I saved the contact in my phone as The Creep, so I knew not to pick up. Eventually, I just blocked the number and tried to forget about it, and in fact did for a couple of weeks. Then I began to receive multiple complaints that my voicemail box was full. Embarrassed, I quickly deleted all my messages, feeling unprofessional. Yet, my voicemail box was still always full, people said. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I tried to empty the mailbox after every voicemail until one day I clicked on the blocked messages on my phone. My stomach sank as I saw hundreds of voicemails that had been blocked but still saved clogging up my inbox. They were almost every single day, at least 5 a day, for weeks. Sometimes it would skip a day or two, but it always came back. So many calls. At first I thought maybe this is some sort of machine, a robot caller malfunctioning. That seemed the easiest answer, the least scary, but the randomness of the length and the dates and times made it unlikely. I started to listen to them with the speaker on, my heart beating in my chest. The same faint ruffling sounds, but each unique and utterly random. My heart skipped a beat when I heard a human voice on one buried amongst the others. This was a person who had called me every day, multiple days for weeks, listened to my voice saying to leave them a message and left a silent message. Hundreds of them. I deleted them all. I didn't know what to do. I Googled the name associated with the number, and all I could find was an article about someone with the name and same address who had been killed in a gang shooting a few years back on one of those people look-up pages. Over the year, I have done my best to forget it. I continue to clear the messages every few weeks or so. I don't listen to them anymore. Even today, I had to clear them out. What is happening? When I was about 15, I came out to my mom, and we bumped heads so much that she sent me to Las Vegas to live with my dad, whom I've never met before. My dad is a minister, and his wife is a pastor. I guess you could say it was her way of conversion therapy. I don't know. My dad and stepmom let me know all the time how much they didn't like me or my lifestyle. I went to church 3 to 4 times a week, and my dad would beat me all the time. He was so angry. I would call my mom and ask her to please bring me back. She wouldn't get me. One day, my dad and I got into a huge argument. He accused me of talking to girls and broke my phone. I had had it, so I left. I stayed one night in the apartment complex at some older guy I used to hang out with's house, but he got weird, so I found some change and found a payphone to call my friend and ask if I could stay at her house. She said it was cool, but she had to sneak me in. I found a way over to her house and ended up getting kicked out because my stepmom called her grandmother looking for me, and her uncle comes upstairs saying he doesn't allow faggots in his home. It was about 9 p.m. at this point. I had no clue where I really was, where I was going, or how I was going to get anywhere, so I just walked. I walked for hours until I found something that looked remotely safe, in my child mind. I found a neighborhood Walmart. I was exhausted. It was around 2 a.m., so I sat at a picnic table in the front and dozed off. I will never forget this voice, but someone screamed, "Wake up!" I immediately jumped up and turned around, and there were two men about 3 feet away from me. They paused as I looked up at them, trying not to seem frightened. One of them breaks the silence with a weird smile and says, do you know if this store is open?" I, confused, said, "Yes, I think it's 24 hours. They didn't say anything else and just walked away. To this day, I have no idea whose voice that was that said wake up, but I will never forget it. All I can think about is why were two men walking up to a sleeping child at 2 to 3 a.m. asking if a store was open that they could just walk into, and how it seemed I woke up in just the right amount of time. So I stay up very late into the night. It was 3 a.m. when I heard a noise coming from the staircase. I live on the first floor, so I can always hear people coming in and out of our house, so it's not anything particularly out of the ordinary. I looked into the peephole out of curiosity, and there was this guy, dressed all in black, with what seemed like a glass bottle in his hand. I don't know if it was vodka or whatever. And he fumbled with it for a bit and put it down on the windowsill. I thought nothing of it. He then lit up a cigarette, stood there for a bit, turned in a way that he was facing our door, and crouched for whatever the fuck reason. That was a little weird to me, so I backed out. The next time I looked, he was way down the stairs at the front door, just standing there and smoking. He then went back up the stairs to the windowsill, but he was turning around to look exactly at the door as if he was aware that I was looking. I was frozen in place. I was so scared I started to get dizzy. And then he started to move his hand rapidly in the crotch area. I was genuinely terrified by then. I went back into the room and sat on my bed in shock. After a few minutes, I braced myself and went back to the door, and holy shit, he was standing right there in front of our door looking up. I backed the fuck away. What the fuck? In my room, I listened closely to the sounds from the staircase, and I heard a bang from the front door. I felt relieved, but after some time there was another bang, and now I don't know what to think. I took a pill to help calm me down a bit, and I don't know if I'm exaggerating or whatever, but that seriously effing scared me. I don't know what to think. I don't think I'm going to sleep tonight. I'm keeping my earphone volume on low so that I would be able to listen to the sounds from the outside. Also, sorry if the layout was confusing, I just really needed to get this shit out. Today, I was on my way to work, and I work about 35 to 40 minutes from my home. At this point, I'm driving on the interstate, and I'm about 15 minutes away from my job. I'm listening to music, right, doing my thing. Then I get a low tire pressure notification. I don't really think much of it at first, because everyone knows during the winter your tire pressure fluctuates. Also, I've been having weird issues with my tires anyways, so I'm used to the notifications. But this particular tire, I've never had an issue with. So when I got the first notification, it said 23 psi. When I double-checked it after my first realization, it was 17 psi. And I was like, oh man, I think it's flat. So I call my brother, and he and I both work at the same place, so I knew he could help me, and he's like 10 minutes or so from me. So I tell him what's going on, and I'm like, by the way, I don't have a spare. My car didn't come with one when I bought it. So he's like, all right, well, maybe call your boss and let him know what's going on, and maybe I can come help you. So I call my boss and let him know. He obviously tells me to pull over and let him know where I'm at so he can send one of our guys to help me. I work for a plumbing company, so I'm around guys all the time, so it's not unusual for him to tell them to help me out. So I tell him where I'm at once I'm pulled over off the interstate. I pull off to this run-down used car dealership right off the interstate, okay? maybe like 7 to 10 cars in the lot. Then this red truck pulls into the lot as well, and let's call him Bobby. I know what Bobby's truck looks like, and this ain't it. So this random guy gets out of his truck. I call my dad and tell him my situation. I lock my doors. The guy keeps wanting me to roll down my window, and I'm asking my dad what to do. My dad tells me to go ahead and see what he wants, but don't roll my window down too much. I do as I am told, and the guy asks me if I need help. I say, no, I'm okay. I have a flat tire, and I'm just waiting for this guy from my work to get here. He proceeds to say that his tire blew out. Okay, man, what do you want a 21-year-old woman to do who's already waiting for help? Anyway, so he keeps persisting on helping me out, and I keep telling him that I'll wait for my coworker. He then asks me if I'll drive him down the road for $100, and keeps asking, and I keep saying no. I then roll up my window. He then gets in his truck with the blown-out tire and drives away. I don't know what would have happened if I did what he asked me to, but I hope to never see that guy in the red truck again. So I am a delivery driver, and I like to park at Panera Bread when I'm waiting for an order because there are a few restaurants in the area people order at. I pulled into Panera, and shortly after, a man in a white SUV pulls up beside me, stares at me intensely, and then backs into a parking spot diagonally behind me. He didn't get out of his car, but then again, maybe he could have been a delivery driver as well, waiting for an order. After a minute or so, I decided to drive around because I was creeped out. I felt silly and tried to forget about it. As I was driving, I got an order for Arby's. I drove to Arby's and picked it up and then drove to the customer's house. The customer lived in a gated community, so I pulled up to the gate and put in the gate code. It was wrong. I tried a couple more times, but the gate didn't open. Then a white SUV pulls up behind me. I already forgot about the man from Panera, so I didn't think anything until I pulled forward to let him put in his gate code so he could get in. I pulled forward, but he just sat there and didn't pull up to the box to put in the gate code. That's when I remembered the white SUV from Panera. I decided to turn around and try to call the customer somewhere else so I could see if it was the same guy. I turned around and drove past him, still sitting in the same spot. I look over, and it's the same man. The weird thing is he was just staring straight forward. He didn't pull up to put a gate code in. He wasn't looking at his phone. He didn't look at me. I ended up taking a right and driving down a street to pull over and call the customer to get the correct gate code. As I headed back to the customer's house, I passed the man. I hadn't seen him any other time after that. Maybe he was a delivery driver as well and was hoping I pulled up to wait for the gate to open, and when I turned around and left, he was annoyed. Either way, I found it was a really weird coincidence that a man I got a weird vibe from just happened to drive to the same place as me, twice. This just happened a few days ago. I was at a bar with one of my best friends, and we started a conversation with a couple sitting next to us. They were very kind and claimed that they were in town for a funeral. Time goes by, my friend and I have had a few drinks and were enjoying the experience as we do not get out often. Randomly, this middle-aged woman pulls me and my friend from the bar. She claims that we are in imminent danger and need to leave immediately. Naturally, I'm skeptical and ask for more details. She claims that she is with the government and the couple that we are talking to are involved in a sex trafficking ring. She begs us to not touch our drinks again and to immediately leave. She apparently had already talked to management and set up for a bartender to walk us to our cars. I told her that I wasn't walking with anyone except for the one bartender I know personally to ensure I wasn't falling into a trap. I go back to the bar, and the couple starts asking how we know her and what she wanted. At this point, I am in full panic mode, and my brain isn't functional enough to even lie. I try, but the couple was definitely suspicious and could see through me. The guy literally said, "You don't know that woman." We immediately left, and our friend bartender walked us to our car very confused. Honestly, I'm not sure if the lady was insane or actually had grounds in believing the couple were sex traffickers. Perhaps this wouldn't be creepy to some, but as a young, petite woman in a big city, it left me feeling very vulnerable. So I came across an ad on Gumtree.au. It's a buy and sell site in Australia where you can post anything from cars, jobs, clothes, etc. This ad stated that it was a pop-up nudist resort looking for staff, and it was $1,500 a day. It would supposedly be a strictly non-sexual bartending gig. The first red flag was that they were at capacity for male staff and only looking for female applicants. Naturally, I was curious. I messaged the guy asking for more information. He stated that it was strictly non-sexual and fully clothed, and that he would be hosting interviews at a hotel in the city if I would be interested. I asked for any additional information, i.e. a website or anything, and he stated that they don't advertise as he's, quote, affiliated in the nudist community and have no website as they value their clients' privacy. Thankfully, I'm pretty switched on. It left a sickening feeling in the pit of my stomach, so I reported it to the local police station and will be emailing them screenshots of the conversation. Here's a few copy and pastes of the most concerning parts. Me. Just wondering if the interview will take place in the lobby, and is there a name of the company by any chance? Him. I don't, sorry. We have no website, as we do not advertise at all. I'm affiliated with many nudist communities. I'll provide my ID in the lobby for you so you know you're safe. Me. I am very interested, but I'm quite unsure of the legitimacy due to the lack of advertising and no company name, etc. Him. I have never advertised, and my clients value their privacy. It's all good. We can talk in the lobby first and then proceed from there if you're happy. From then, I immediately called the local police station and sent in a form to the AFP, Australian Federal Police, trafficking site, with details.
Hello again, little Vickies. Thanks for listening. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe with the notification bell on. If you have a story of your own you'd like to share and possibly have read on the channel, send it to me at veronica45stories@gmail.com. Link is also in the description. Until next time, be good.